welcome back to Football Cubillo. Today we have a special guest, Eddie, aka CRC Football on Twitter. I'll pass it over to him, let him give himself a quick introduction.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Hey, thanks for having me. So if you don't follow me on Twitter, it's at CRCFUTBOL. I do a lot of coverage and analysis about the domestic league, and then, of course, also for La Sele.
All right. Also, I want to take a quick second to say thank you because you're like one of the only voices giving any attention to Costa Rican soccer in general, not just the league but the national team. You know, living out here in the U.S., it gets a little tiring just hearing Mexico, U.S., Mexico, U.S., Mexico, U.S. So just want to say thank you very much for, giving us a bit of a voice out there, man.
Yeah, no, honestly, that's mainly why I started it. I used to work as an Opta analyst in the MLS digital offices, and most of the coverage about Costa Rica used to come from guys like that who would like sometimes pay attention, and they would like use the Gold Cup when Keylor Navas wasn't there as a reference point as to where we were. And I started more and more trying to become a voice just to give people some source of information that's more accurate. So
yeah, exactly.
The Mexico stuff got annoying for me too.
Yeah. So yeah, man, let's just jump right into it. Let's start off with the Octagonal, because the way we started and the way we finished is two totally different teams. Even to the point where it seems like it's two totally different coaches. Starting in I think the first 6 games, we only won 1 game. So I think I saw a tweet from you a while back saying how we just gave away the first 6 games of Octagonal. So I mean, what are your thoughts from the way we started to where we are now?
So I think the way we started the Octagonal, in all honesty, a lot of it had to do with the Federation taking too long and firing Ronald Gonzalez. And, he wasn't getting the results for over a year. It was very clear the direction that he was taking the national team was not where we needed to be headed into World Cup qualifying. But they kept holding on to him, maybe for financial reasons. It's a pandemic. It's very difficult to let go of a coach because you're going to have to pay his salary and pay somebody else's salary. So financially, it made sense as to why it took so long, but it still had a damaging impact. So Luis Fernando Suarez finally comes in just right before the Gold Cup, and a lot of the player decisions and the player pool that he's interacting with is kind of like handpicked for him and not necessarily something that he was really doing himself. So he didn't have too much knowledge with the player pool. It was a lot of learning on the job with not enough time and zero margin for error. And that kind of reflected in the first 6 games, where he was trying to put a lot of, square pegs into round holes and doing things that didn't make sense. So the Panama game for me was really an eye-opener in terms of where we were going to go under his direction and what I ultimately thought would have been a shortcoming for us. So we play against Panama, and he likes to play a low block, but a lot of it was long ball verticality and winning 1v1 duels in the air. And he has Manfred Ugalde being responsible to do this. Now, normally you're going to play that kind of system. You're going to deploy those kind of tactics. You need a big body. You need a Jose Guillermo Ortiz type. You need an Old Sabo type. You need a true 9. And a player like Ugalde is more technical. He's more dropping the midfield. He's more linking up. He plays with a little bit of 10 qualities and not necessarily what they call the biotipo of like a real 9. But that's what Luis Fernando Suarez wanted to do. That's how he wanted to play. And he had to start figuring out, while we were playing very important games that had World Cup qualifying impact, with players that necessarily couldn't do the job that he wanted them to do. And it was a lot of setting them up for failure. So that's kind of where the relationship soured with Ugalde, where he was asking him to do things that he can't do. And there was just a huge disconnect there, and Ugalde left. So then that's when he started, we saw Jonathan Moya get his turn. Jose Guillermo Ortiz eventually got his turn. And it was a lot of him trying to figure it out with those first 6 games, and then finally realizing himself, like, I really have no idea where anybody should be. I have no idea who really I should be calling up. And then that's how you get to the end of that 6-game window against the U.S., where we called up Alvaro Saborio and we called up Christian Bolaños, and everybody's looking around like, all right, hold on. What are we doing here that we're calling up a 39-year-old, a 37-year-old? And we're supposed to have this next generation in mind. So it really was a slow start. But again, I think it goes back to he was in a tough spot and he was doing a lot of on-the-job learning.
Exactly, yeah. I share a pretty similar opinion. For you, what is it that changed? Because obviously the player pool that he was calling in the first couple games changed drastically. If I'm not mistaken, I forget when exactly it was, but it got to a point where qualification to the World Cup seemed like it wasn't going to happen. So the Federation did something a little drastic, and they asked a couple people to come in to help with the national team selection. Primarily Jafet Soto, Angel Catalina, Robert Garbanzo, and Victor Alfaro. For me, that seems like, I don't know who in the Federation came up with that idea, but whoever did deserves some sort of raise, because that, for me, I feel like changed everything. I don't know how you feel regarding that.
No, that I definitely agree on that. That was really the turning point for us. The commission that they put together with guys who were really in tune. People had their questions about that because there's a lot of club bias, and I say that as I wear my foot out. There's a lot of club bias, and it plays into people's perceptions, ideas, and selections ultimately. But I think getting that commission of basically sporting directors and people that are really in tune with the Costa Rica national team and the player pool itself in the domestic league, I think that played a huge part in allowing Luis Fernando Suarez to really ingratiate himself with the players that were in the domestic league. And that's when he started to really find the players that he would start to piece in little by little throughout the remainder of qualifying. So the exact time that it happened, ironically enough, was after that USA game where we lost 2-1 against the U.S. And that's when we called Sabo, that's when we called Bolaños. So he calls his first mini camp, the microcycles, and that's when he starts to meet the Jeffrey Valverdes, the Daniel Chacons, Brandon Aguilera, Carlos Martinez, all these guys from the domestic league that, they're not necessarily playing for big clubs. I don't know how many minutes of Municipal Grecia that he was watching.
Yeah.
Certainly not as much as I was watching, but that's how Houston Salas eventually comes in, plays a great game against Mexico. Chacon makes his debut in that game as well. Jeffrey Valverde has to step in when Keisha Fuller gets COVID. And that was the real turning point, the setting up of the commission and then allowing Luis Fernando Suarez to really work closely with the domestic players. And the league itself definitely deserves a big chunk of credit here, because much to the league kind of operationally falling apart with these long pauses, they took really long breaks that most leagues won't take, allowed Suarez to get the time that he needed to work with these guys. So I think him being able to work with them like an extra week more and getting a little bit more of touches with the way he wants to deploy his system, I think worked out in the long run, where other leagues are still going on and we're on break because we're preparing for World Cup qualifying. And I think that's how you end up with the second half of the Octagonal really playing out completely differently.
So I guess where I'm trying to go with too is, where do you give most of the credit to? Because I'm stuck between, I have some sort of sympathy with Suarez because, like you said, he came made in another player pool. He's just kind of at a certain point stuck with certain players. He doesn't know the National League, and then this comes and they give him a whole new cast of people to really work with. So I don't know, how much percentage would you give to Suarez? How much percentage do you give to Jafet Soto and those guys that come in? And do you think it's more than? I don't know where you would put all that put all that down to.
Yeah, that's tough. In all honesty, I think 100% of the credit goes to the players, because I think throughout all this, they were always put in a tough spot. They didn't ask for the coaching change to begin with when Gustavo Matosas decided that he was going to quit because he found national team soccer to be boring. They didn't ask for that. I think them dealing with all the changes, them dealing with COVID, them dealing with different tactical setups, different ideas, different voices, different people kind of managing the team itself, they always showed up. They always put in the tackle. They put up the fight. And, I was at that last game against the U.S. and seeing Calvo walk out towards the end of that game and just because we were up 2-0, we knew we were going to win that game. We were qualifying for fourth, and just hearing him bring the crowd up and then just, the performance that Watson put on and Kaylor taking pictures and autographs of all these people, is 100% of the credit should go to the players, because they really put on the performances that we needed. Because I still think Suarez, even with getting the points and the results, he still made a lot of huge mistakes. And if not for Keylor Navas, he doesn't get the results he needed to get bailed out. And I look back to the Canada game where we're up 1-0. We're in complete control of that game. And in the second half, he decides to go, I think it was a 5-4-1 low block, and just invited Canada to attack us. And they hit the post. They hit the bar. Keylor makes a huge save on Buchanan. And we end up winning that game. But Canada, in all honesty, they deserved the draw. But it was the players that saw the result out. It was Keylor Navas being massive and getting the results. I still put a lot of blame on the Federation. I still put a lot of blame on Suarez himself for being stubborn because, in all honesty, qualification shouldn't have been this difficult. We had the talent. We had the player pool. We had everything in place. It was just so poorly handled from the moment Matosas left to that first mini camp. It shouldn't have taken 6 games for Luis Fernando Suarez to find out that Houston Salas is a good soccer player. It shouldn't have taken him 6 games to find out that Carlos Martinez is a better option at right back than Keisha Fuller. Like these are things that he should have picked up on a lot earlier because it was available to him and it took too long. So yes, he got the results, but that's the problem that I have with people is that they want him to sign on for the next project. There are still a lot of little things in there that you need to pay attention to that's not sustainable. It's not going to carry on for another 4-year cycle. So 100% credit to the players. You still need to hold the people in charge accountable because we're in this playoff and not qualified now because of them. We should have finished easily top 3.
I would even say we should have finished first place, to be honest.
Close to it, yeah. In all honesty, we should have.
Because the fact that we started off so poorly and then at the end made that big stride to get where we're at right now, and we're only 3 points off of Canada and Mexico. I don't know if you had said it on your Twitter timeline, I think after the Canada game or after the U.S. game, but if we would have started with anything sort of resembling what we have now, it would have been a totally different qualification. Wouldn't have had as much stress or heartbreak or heartache or very least.
At least second. Because in all honesty, like just think of the Jamaica game. The 1-1 draw to Jamaica. There's no reason why we shouldn't have won that game.
Yeah.
That's you add on 2 points there. I feel like the USA game away, that was another dropped opportunity. That's like just maybe it's 3 to 4 points more. And in the long run, maybe it's not that much, but 3 to 4 points more in this one, though, we're going to finish ahead of Mexico. And we're easily in second. And I'm not worried about New Zealand in a 90-minute playoff game where anything can happen.
Mm-hmm. That's true, yeah. Just to touch a little bit, too, about the I don't want to say I don't want to say ineptitude, but the sort of one of the mistakes Suarez makes. Recently, I was watching an interview that Yashin Quesada did with Suarez, and he asked him point blank, hey, when did it change? Because the way we started is different how we ended. And according to him, there was no change. It's like, it's just part of the process. There was no change. So, I know me personally when I hear something like that, and I know you that keeps in tune with it, knows that that's not true. There was an obvious change. So that's the other thing that kind of bothers me as well when I hear a lot of the press in Costa Rica talking about, oh man, we should sign him again for no matter what happens for another 4 years, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas, I don't know how you felt about him being appointed in the first place, but personally, I didn't want him to be appointed in the first place because of like what we're talking about now, not knowing the players and all that. I would have much preferred someone like Guimaraes or at least someone who at least knew the league or knew the players or knew what was going on in Costa Rica. But no worth crying over spilled milk at this point. Yeah, so now we finish in 4th place. We beat USA with a bunch of young players. How would you go into that game against New Zealand? Because unlike y'all, I am a little worried about New Zealand, not because of the quality New Zealand may or may not have, but because I still remember games, for example, when we were going into the World Cup in South Africa. The first 5 games we're first place. Looks like we're going to qualify walking. Then we lose to Honduras. We lose to, I think, Mexico. And then ultimately lose to Salvador. And then, that USA game at the end, I know the tie sent us to the repechaje again. But, I still remember those type of games where it goes, we should win these games, and then we don't win them. And it's 90 minutes, so that's the only thing that has me a little worried about. But how do you see the game, us going into that game?
I'm still nervous, and for the same reasons. If you're a gambling man, we're the favorites. I don't think it's wrong to assume that we should win this game. If you had to bet money on it, you would like our odds, you would like our chances. The problem is, it's not the old format where it's home and away. It's 180 minutes, and I think over 180 minutes, especially if they have to come to Costa Rica, I think we blitz New Zealand. But 90 minutes, neutral site, different continent for both countries. Anything can happen. You can get a bad ref, you can get a bad call, you can get a red card, you can get an injury. God forbid any of these things happen. But, we saw Keylor Navas come out against the U.S. and your boy Moreira stepping in the goal and just completely botching it. Which, by the way, let me tell you something. I'm done with him. He has no business being anywhere near the national team. And Miguel Ahu should be starting for Alajuela. That's a little bit tidbit I'll give you now. But like
Yeah.
little things like this can happen in 90 minutes. So
Yeah.
I'm, in all honesty, worried just because of that, because it's an unknown, and anything can happen in football. Just ask Italy. Italy
Yeah.
would have never thought they were going to lose to North Macedonia. Things happen, but I still think, Suarez was hired because he ultimately gets results. They're not pretty. They're not sustainable. They're not something that you want to build on. It's not some foundational thing that he's creating, but it's a means to an end. It's the result that we need. I still think we'll get the result. What I would like to see, though, is something that I really haven't seen throughout qualifying, and that's a comfortable win. I would like to know that at the end of these 90 minutes, I'm not having a heart attack. I'm not holding my breath, hoping and praying that we're going to get the win. I would like to know by, like, the 60th minute, we're in. It's comfortable. We're in cruise control. I don't want to see us go up 1-0 and then Suarez start to park the bus like he did against Canada. That's the last thing I want to see. I want to be able to, from start to finish, control the game, dictate the tempo, get a couple of goals, and get a comfortable win, because in all honesty, we have the player pool and the talent to do it.
So I'm not sure how it's going to come out, because I know the majority of the qualification, like you said, I remember against the U.S., we got a goal in the first minute of the game, and for the rest of the time, it was just sit back and wait. So, and I know the last game against the U.S. was totally different. We had a lot of young players out, and it didn't seem like they were playing the same way that we played the other games. I'm not sure if he gave them more freedom, or it's because we had such young players that they, maybe we had a little bit, since they didn't have as much experience, they would go up more. But, I don't know what tactics he reverts to for that New Zealand game. If it's going to be how we played 99% of this qualification round, or if it's going to be kind of how it was the U.S., where, yeah, we were sitting back, but at the same time, we're touching the ball a lot more effectively. We're pushing up more. We're taking chances. We're creating chances. How do you see him going into that game?
Yeah, I see the U.S. game. I think he knew the U.S. were running on tired legs. That was the third game, but they had that trip to Mexico, and playing at that altitude, I think, really tires you out. I think the U.S. played pretty well in the first half. In all honesty, I think they probably deserved a goal, but having the tired legs, not being able to finish their chances, he started to implement a little bit more of a high pressing game, and pressing more out of a mid block than necessarily a low block. And then that's when things really started to turn in the second half, because we had younger, fresher legs that he was able to rotate them in, whereas the U.S. were a little bit tired. So pressing them a little bit more made sense. And that's, in all honesty, something that I would like to see, because we have more quality than New Zealand. So, I'm fine if he continues that 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1 shape. The 10 drops, the 10 plays a little bit higher next to the 9. But instead of dropping the block into our own half, I'd like to see it more kind of in midfield and make it more of a midfield block, and then press in those areas. So when we do win the ball, we can transition a little bit closer to goal than having to go, 60, 70 yards or something like that. So I think both teams having to travel will play a little bit into that, where I don't think he's going to allow necessarily New Zealand to kind of take the game to him. I think he'll try and come out and take it first. I just want him that once he gets what he needs, that he doesn't revert back to what he's done the entire World Cup qualifying campaign, where it's 1-0, I got what I need now. That's it. Let's just close up shop, drop to a 5-4-1 complete low block, and just invite New Zealand in. I don't think there's a need to allow New Zealand to tell you how any spell of this game is going to go. I think we should be able to press them high, press them in midfield, take advantage of our skill, take advantage of our talent, and try and get 2 or 3 before we start to drop it into a shell.
Yeah, I would agree as well. But I don't know. Let's see how it goes. Going into the New Zealand game, I think it was yesterday or maybe 2 days ago. They released the list of players that they called to the microciclo for the last one before the New Zealand game. Which players do you feel that should have gotten an opportunity that didn't, or is there players that made the list that you feel like maybe they shouldn't have been in it to begin with?
I don't know why we're still bothering with Keisha Fuller at this point. Blanco is healthy, so he's in there. Carlos Martin has proved that he's probably the better solution than both of them. Again, Morado, but not biased. I would like Carlos Martinez to be the option at right back, and hopefully down the line, Matarita, his recovery is a little bit better than some people expect it to be. The big one for me is Christian Gamboa, and I know he hasn't been a part of this process at all, and I get Ultimately, what Suarez did is he's going to finish this out with the guys that got him there, and I'm okay with that. I think if at this point he wants to keep it a little bit closed with what he knows for a game of this magnitude, I think he's earned that, and he's justified in doing so. What I don't want to see is, if we do win and we qualify and we're months out from this tournament, that he's already basically set his roster up. I don't want to see that because I still think there are players that through league form and just overall talent deserve an opportunity. Christian Gamboa should be our starting right back if we qualify for the World Cup. Blanco, Fuller, Martinez, not one of them are better than him. I think if you're playing at the Bundesliga at a high level for a mid-table club and you have World Cup experience, I don't think there's any reason why he shouldn't be starting for us. I think a player like Alan Guevara getting a call-up, good for him. But Ronaldo Araya, for me, is a better option if we're just looking at Cartago. I think Araya, for me, Araya has a slightly higher grade throughout the season. Don't get me wrong. Guevara's been great, but we're talking about an 11-year difference. Guevara hasn't been in the national team in almost a decade, so it's not like he's bringing some kind of experience with him. So why not go with a younger, more dynamic player when it's already proven that it plays out well for you with somebody like Brandon Aguilera, Anthony Contreras? Let's give some more of these young kids a go. The one I'll bring up that is way out there, and I'd like to see him get an opportunity. He probably won't play any minutes. But Ron Wilson from Grecia is a player that I'm really intrigued by. He's 19. He's young. He's dynamic in midfield, very physical. And I already kind of know what we have in Dogalo. Suarez loves him. He's a very physical player. I don't necessarily know if defensive midfield is in his future, but that's basically where he's really been playing for La Salle. Heredia plays everywhere. He's played midfield, right back, right center back, and a 5-man back line. But I don't necessarily know if that's where his future is. I know Rowan Wilson is a good central midfielder. So I would kind of like to see those two swap out just for this window. Do I think it'll happen? No. Do I think Rowan Wilson is going to get any minutes in the future? No. But to see a young kid like that get an opportunity is something I would be excited by. And then for me, it really is, it's going to boil down to the winger battles when you really look at it. There's a lot of guys that, again, closed window that aren't getting the opportunity. I think Carlos Mora is not a sure thing moving forward. I think he's great, but there's a lot of guys in those positions that are going to battle him for that spot. And we have a few months of league form to consider with Randall Leal still, Jimmy Marin. We don't know what Alonso Martinez's future is going to look like in Belgium. So I think that position overall, for me, it's a free-for-all. And I think there's about 8 guys that you would look at and you would feel comfortable taking. And it's always been an exciting position for me, especially under Gustavo Matosas, the way he utilized them in his system. And that's why I didn't like Suarez's system of playing vertical, playing long balls, dealing with like Jose Guillermo Ortiz and Jonathan Moya and that type, because it took away from what was really our strength on the wing. And I want to see those kids develop more and get more opportunities. But there's going to be a lot of fun battles to really monitor over the course of the next few months if we do play well against New Zealand.
Yeah, just to touch a little bit more on that. I felt the same way when Suarez would use Leal, guys like Randall Leal and even Luis Diaz, when they would come on, it seemed like it was very easy to pick on them. Oh, well, a lot of people mean to say, oh, no hace nada, why do we call them? They've given so many chances, they don't do anything. So I agree with you there as well, because I think with a different type of system, maybe a different way we set up, those guys don't have as bad games as they did in maybe the first couple games. So, but with Leal, I have this much more patience with him, just because I've seen him do so well in the MLS, and I watch the games, and then when it comes to national team, it doesn't seem to translate as much. And I think it was there's a kid that was on La Liga as well. I forget his name. Ariel Lassiter. Same thing. He seemed to be kind of good sometimes, and then he'd go to the national team. It's just a different player. I don't know what would happen to him. The other player I would like to see for that game against New Zealand is Marco Ureña, just because of the fact that he has been playing in the Australian League for a while. He seems to be scoring goals, and I've personally just always liked the way he's played. I don't know how you feel about him up top. I don't know if he should be a starter or anything like that, but I would like to see him at least part of the team for that game.
I'm hesitant, in all honesty, and you know really? Why? It's because of Jonathan Moya. I think I have PTSD from guys that do well in these what's really obscure, like Asian type leagues.
Yeah.
And like I get it, you have good form there, but I don't think that's necessarily going to carry over. I think Udenia is a little bit different than somebody like Jonathan Moya because Udenia is a proven commodity, where Jonathan Moya really has never proven that he belongs in a national team shirt. And Udenia, man, I still remember his goal against Mexico, that equalizer that he scored. It's one of the best World Cup qualifying goals I think I've ever seen. So I'm a little bit more lenient with that. I just, he's not the type of nine that Suarez likes. He's not a holdup. He's more of a slasher running behind type. And I don't think, especially with the way that Contreras has come along, Contreras really showing up to be the 9 of the future. And I haven't given up on Ugalde either. Man, just thinking of those two in a true 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2 system, where Ugalde is just kind of like playing off his back shoulder, that would really excite me. And I haven't given up on him either. But I think Contreras' development has really, it's tampered down the need to call up guys like Urenia, call up guys like Moya, because I kind of feel like we have somebody that can do what Suarez wants. Contreras has a lot of good hold-up play, but Contreras is also very technical. He makes a lot of smart decisions, and he makes a lot of good runs. He's versatile. He can play on the wing. So I think he brings a little bit more. And I think it's because of him that we really kind of don't need Urenia at this point.
True, that's true. Yeah, I wouldn't take out Contreras for the life of me. If he's fit and everything's good, he should be the number 9. Going into that New Zealand game again, do you think he plays some of these young guys that look pretty good against the U.S., or do you think he just reverts back to what he was using for the last 7-8 games of the qualification?
I'd like to see a balance of the two, to be honest. I'm pretty sure that Blanco is going to start over Martinez, and I don't think that'll be the right decision. But there's a pretty solid core of players that, especially down the spine, that are solidified. I think Kaylor, Calvo, and to me the battle between Duarte and Waston is fascinating because I think you can make a legitimate case for both. I love Kendall Waston, and I still think Kendall Waston, he didn't get the opportunity to have his move to Europe because Machillo really screwed him over by not starting him in Russia and going with Johnny Acosta over him. And, that ultimately that's what cost us against Brazil, because I'm telling you right now, the header that Johnny Acosta does not win that led to Brazil's goal, Kendall Waston is not losing that in the air. Yeah. So I think he never got his opportunity. And him stepping in when Duarte got hurt towards the second half of this run, man, he was great. He has this presence about him where intangibles they pop off the screen. He's a true leader, and I think a lot of the players respect him and look up to him. So I think that's something that you kind of want to hold on to. But I think that center back battle between Calvo, Duarte, and Waston is something fascinating to watch. But it's still, an experienced core. You're not gonna Juan Pablo Vargas is not gonna break into that 3. I think Vargas for me is the definitive 4th at that point. I think in midfield, Borges and Tejeda, it's kind of hard to break that up. It's the player in front of them that really is where you get the ability to put in, Brandon Aguilera. Suarez wasn't called up again. Adam Suarez from La Liga. So, him not getting called up. If we start Brian, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself at that point. Look, I get it. Escapi, you guys are very emotional about him. You love him. I love him, but he's not a starter. And that's another thing we can go back in terms of what Suarez did wrong. Continually bringing in Brian Reese in the second half for no tactical reason, especially against Canada, it almost cost us. I don't like that idea. It just, I feel like he just put him in because he's Brian Reese, and that's not a good enough reason at this level. But I think I would really like to see Brandon Aguilera get another shot out there. I thought he was fantastic against the U.S. When Pulisic is out there, when all these golden generation Americans are out there. The best player on that pitch that day, besides Keylor Navas, was Brandon Aguilera. So I would love to see him get an opportunity. And, Contreras is a young guy I think is going to get his opportunity. With that, I think that's going to move Campbell to the wing, which I'm okay with if you play him on the right side. It's really who we play to counter him on the left. Gerson Torres, for me, of all the wingers throughout the entire World Cup qualifying campaign, Gerson Torres for me was the top winger in terms of grade. His grade wasn't that great. It was barely above a 3, but he was the best one out of everyone from him all the way down to Ariel Lassiter, who was the worst one out of all of them. So I still think in some dynamic areas, when you think about the 10, the 9, the wing position, we have a lot of young talent that can really showcase their abilities out there. And then you balance that out with what's really an experienced core in your spine, which is really what you want when you're playing a game of this magnitude. You want experience in the important areas, and you want young, fresh legs in the dynamic areas, like the wing and the 9 position. So I think it's a good balance that we have.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, just to touch back a little bit with that Brian thing, I agree with you as well. It's just I still remember that USA game. I think he stole the ball at the halfway mark, and he has like a 40 to 35 yard solo dash, and it's just he couldn't do it anymore. After I saw that, yeah, yeah. After I saw that, I knew that it just like you said, sometimes it seems like so I just put him in just because he's Brian Ruiz, and like you said, I love him a lot. I know the things he's done for the national team in the past and everything, but I'm more with you on that train where. I can understand maybe someone being part of the team to help with the ambience and to like help with these young guys, give them a little bit more like experience with, like from the sidelines or something. But I don't know, man. And
Like,
another, yeah,
he scored an important goal against Panama, right? Like
yeah,
when he beat Panama, and everybody was like, of course, whenever Brian Ruiz does something great, everybody's in my mentions about it. Like, oh my God, but he scored against Panama. Like, look, if you watch that Panama game, right before he scored that goal, his grade dropped to like a 1 point something, and then he scored the goal. Panama completely forgot he was on the field when he scored that. If you watch from the beginning of the second half to right before that goal, he has a free run coming down the back post. Not a single Panamanian defender is within 5 yards of him. No one's picking up his run. They just completely forgot about him. The ball lands to his feet. And if the goalkeeper is just a split second better, if he's Keylor Navas, that's an easy save. But he just missed it, and Brian scores. And then of course Brian scored the big goal. But again, that's not sustainable. That's not something that I want to bring into the group of death with Germany, with Spain, with Japan if we do get there, because those little inches that we get against Panama, we're not going to get against better competition. So you have to think about what's going to be sustainable down into the future. And like, look, he's great to be there for the training environment, to get the kids thinking in terms of mentality. I 100% agree that his leadership should be there. I just don't want to rely on him in crucial moments.
Yeah, and from that goal as well, if you remember right, like I believe he didn't even get the ball. Like he didn't even get a good shot with the ball. I think that he scores more because, like you were saying before, the goalkeeper's not in a good position to make that save, or maybe his quality isn't good enough. But that's, I don't know. But I'm glad he scored, don't get me wrong. Yeah. of course. And I agree with you with Gerson Torres as well. I think after that game, I think it was Honduras where he scores that last minute. Ever since then, for me, I think he's been the best one as well. Because I like Alonso Martinez, but I just feel like he doesn't finish enough of the opportunities that are given to him by Campbell or other players on the field. So he might make good runs, but just that finishing part that has me worried and stuff.
That Mexico game,
yeah,
he had 2 great runs off of Campbell, and Campbell played him through, and he missed both of them. If he just scores one of them, we have an important, like, monumental victory in Mexico, which would have been fantastic. But yeah, he needs way more chances to score. They're different players. I think Alonso Martinez wants to be more of a finisher. Gerson is more of a creator and more of a facilitator. He got the big assist too. I want to say, I think it was in the Jamaica game that he got his assist. I can't remember correctly, but he did the job to win the ball back, and then he played the cross in. And I've been a huge proponent of Gerson Torres since last season, when honestly, he led Heredia to that title. He was the best player for them all of last season. And then I think this season he's kind of dropped off a bit, but I think it's because of the national team. All these breaks, he hasn't really had a lot of time to get into form with Heredia, and I think that's why you saw Heredia start basically the first 10 games at the bottom of the league table, because most of their players were playing World Cup qualifying games and they weren't playing league minutes. So now that that's out of the way, you saw very quickly how Heredia just started to climb up the table. But I've been a huge proponent of Gerson Torres. Glad he finally got his opportunity. I just like to see him get it in a game like against New Zealand. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. When it comes to last thing before I let you go, man. When it comes to that midfield, I like Celso a lot. It's just I feel like he doesn't have the legs how he used to have. So it's like you were saying before. It depends who's next to him. Because I like Yeltsin, But if it can't, for me, it can't just be Yeltsin. It has to be someone else to help with the defensive part, to help, give him a little bit more freedom to go up how he likes to and not leave us as exposed in the back. But yeah, man, everything else, man, I agree with you. How we got through qualification with Fuller as our right back, I mean, I don't know. That's a miracle unto itself. But man, appreciate you coming onto our channel and talking Costa Rica football, man. Because like I said before, there's not really many voices out there, brother, and really appreciate everything you do out here, man. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man, exactly. But yeah, man, I don't know if you want to promote anything else you got going on coming up, or.
Yeah, definitely follow me on Twitter. That's where you're going to find most of my commentary at CRCFUTBOL. And then Instagram is a good place to get a lot of the graphical representation of what my commentary is. Sometimes I'll put in, like little tidbits that I see during the games and analysis that I feel like turn the game around. A lot of my player grades are there. I'm going to try and start the YouTube channel up and really, I guess, try to move some of my commentary there, because a lot of the stuff that I do want to talk about, as you can see here as I give you my long answers, 280 characters ain't enough for me. So I'm going to try and get that up and running hopefully throughout the summer. Maybe I can debut it for something for that New Zealand game, maybe a watch along. I got to figure it out. And honestly, I'm a little bit older than most of these young heads that are doing all this stuff on YouTube and Twitch or whatever. So I got to figure that out. But once I get it figured out, hopefully that's the place I can find me too.
All right, perfect, man. And hopefully we'll beat New Zealand, man. We can have you back so we can talk about that group. I don't want to jinx anything yet, but yeah, hopefully we'll beat New Zealand for that game. And we'll link your social medias below right here, man. And again, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks for having me.